My name is Linda Parker, and I learned the hard way that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. For 22 years, I raised Elvis like she was my own. I wasn't just her guardian, I was her mother in every way that mattered. I paid for her schooling, nursed her through every illness, and trusted her with my deepest secrets. She was the one person I believed would never hurt me. I was wrong. The night I came home early and saw her in my kitchen wearing my robe, laughing with my husband, something inside me shattered. Within months, she had taken my marriage, my house, my business, my entire life, and paraded it around like it was hers all along. People told me to move on, that karma would handle her. But karma is slow, and I'm not. I decided I would take back what she stole, quietly, methodically, until she had nothing left. This is how I did it. 23 years ago, I was 35 and running my own catering business. My sister Rachel died in a car crash, leaving behind her 8-year-old daughter Elvis. The girl had nowhere else to go. Her father had disappeared years before, and Rachel's husband had died 2 years earlier. I didn't hesitate to take her in. Elvis was scared and broken when she came to live with me and my husband David. She barely spoke for weeks. I held her through nightmares and helped her with homework. I taught her to cook and drive. I was there for every birthday, every school play, every broken heart. David and I couldn't have children of our own, so Elvis filled that empty space in our hearts. She called me Mom Linda and David Dad Dave. We were a real family. Or so I thought. I built my catering business into something special. Parker's Kitchen became the most wanted caterer in our town. Elvis grew up helping me in the kitchen, learning recipes that had been in my family for generations. Elvis was everything I could have wanted in a daughter. She was smart, beautiful, and charming. Everyone loved her. She got good grades and stayed out of trouble. In high school, she was prom queen and class president. Teachers adored her. Friends flocked to her. After graduation, I paid for her college. Business school, just like she wanted. She said she wanted to help grow Parker's Kitchen into something bigger. I was so proud. My little girl was going to be my business partner. During college breaks, Elvis worked at the catering company. She was a natural with customers. Her smile could charm anyone into ordering more food or booking a bigger event. Sales went up whenever she was around. David loved her too. He taught her how to drive his vintage car and took her fishing every weekend. They had inside jokes I didn't understand. Sometimes I felt a little left out, but I was happy they were close. I thought it meant we were a real family. Looking back, maybe that closeness should have worried me more. Elvis finished college with honors. I threw her a huge graduation party at our house. All our friends and family came. She gave a speech thanking David and me for everything we'd done. She cried when she talked about how we'd saved her life by taking her in. I cried too. I was so proud of the woman she'd become. My investment in her had paid off. Now she was ready to join the business as my partner. We spent hours planning how to expand Parker's Kitchen. We talked about opening a second location, maybe even a restaurant. The summer after graduation was perfect. Elvis moved back home while we worked on business plans. She helped with catering events and brought fresh ideas. Customers loved her energy. I started thinking about stepping back a little, letting her take more control. David seemed happier too. He laughed more, smiled more. I thought it was because our family was complete again. Elvis was home for good, and we were building something together. I should have paid more attention to the little things. How Elvis always offered to stay late and lock up. How she and David had more of those private conversations. How she started dressing differently, more grown up. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday evening in August. I was working late at the office, finishing invoices for 3 weekend events. My head was pounding, so I decided to go home early and rest. Our house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. David's car was there, but no lights were on. I figured they were both asleep. I walked through the front door quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. That's when I heard the laughter coming from the kitchen. Soft, intimate laughter. Elvis laugh, but different somehow. More adults, more knowing. I crept toward the kitchen, my heart starting to beat faster. Something felt wrong. The kitchen light was dim, just the small lamp over the sink glowing. I could see two shadows moving around the counter. When I turned the corner, my world stopped. Elvis was wearing my silk robe, the expensive one David had bought me for our anniversary. She was leaning against the counter, holding a glass of wine. And David was standing way too close to her, his hand on her arm. They both froze when they saw me. Elvis' face went red. David stepped back quickly. "Linda," David said. "You're home early." "I was just making some tea," Elvis said quickly, pulling my robe tighter around herself. David came down for a snack. "I spilled water on my pajamas, so I borrowed your robe." "I hope that's okay." Her voice sounded normal, but her eyes looked guilty. David was staring at the floor, not meeting my gaze. The kitchen felt too warm, too small. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just have a headache. I'm going to bed." I walked upstairs like everything was fine. But my hands were shaking when I closed the bedroom door. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The way they'd been standing, the way they'd looked at each other, the way Elvis wore my robe like she belonged in it. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling. David came to bed an hour later, acting normal. He kissed my forehead and said goodnight like always. But he smelled different. Like Elvis' perfume. The next morning, Elvis acted like nothing had happened. She made breakfast and chatted about work. David read his newspaper and drank his coffee. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed forever. I started watching them more carefully after that night. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own home. I paid attention to every look, every conversation, every moment when David and Elvis were alone together. The signs were small at first. Elvis would touch David's arm when she laughed at his jokes. David would compliment Elvis' hair or dress more often than he complimented mine. They had conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. Elvis started dressing up more, even when we were just working at the office. She wore makeup and perfume every day. She bought new clothes with her savings from working at the catering business. Tight dresses and high heels that made her look older, more sophisticated. David started working out again after years of laziness. He bought new clothes too. He spent more time getting ready in the morning, using cologne and styling his hair. When I asked about it, he said he wanted to get healthier. They both started staying up later, claiming to watch movies or work on business plans. I would go to bed alone and hear them talking downstairs. Their voices were always too quiet for me to understand what they were saying. I wanted to confront them, but I had no proof. Just feelings and suspicions. Maybe I was imagining things. In September, we got a huge catering contract for a wedding in the next state. It was a 3-day event with rehearsal dinner, wedding, and farewell brunch. The biggest job we'd ever landed. I planned to take Elvis with me to handle the event. It would be a good experience for her, and I needed help. But the week before we were supposed to leave, I got food poisoning from bad seafood at a restaurant. I was sick for 3 days, throwing up and barely able to stand. There was no way I could travel or work. Elvis would have to handle the wedding alone. "Don't worry," Elvis said, sitting by my bed with a cup of tea. "I can do this. You've taught me everything I need to know." She looked so confident and mature. Part of me was proud that she was ready for this responsibility. But another part of me worried about leaving such a big job to someone so young. "Take David with you," I said. "He can help with the heavy lifting and setup." Elvis' face lit up. "That's a great idea. We make a good team." Something about the way she said "we" made my stomach turn. Or maybe that was still the food poisoning. They left early Friday morning. I watched from the bedroom window as they loaded the catering van. Elvis wore a professional-looking dress and heels. David carried her overnight bag to the van like a gentleman. They waved goodbye, and I had the strangest feeling I might never see them the same way again. The house felt empty without them. I spent the weekend recovering and trying not to think about what Elvis and David were doing together. They were working, I told myself. Running my business. Representing Parker's kitchen. Elvis called me Saturday night to report that the rehearsal dinner had gone perfectly. The bride's family loved everything. She sounded happy and excited, more alive than I'd heard her in months. Is David helping? I asked. Oh yes, Elvis said. He's been amazing. The guests love him too. He's so charming when he wants to be. Charming. That's how I used to describe David when we first met. 20 years of marriage made him take me for granted. Sunday night, Elvis called again. The wedding had been beautiful, she said. No problems at all. They were staying an extra night because they were too tired to drive home safely. We got a room with 2 beds, Elvis said quickly. Don't worry. I hadn't been worried until she said that. Now I couldn't think about anything else. They came home Monday afternoon, both glowing with success. The wedding photos the bride sent were stunning. Elvis looked professional and confident in every picture. David looked proud standing next to her. They seemed different together now. More comfortable. Like they shared secrets I wasn't part of. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call that changed everything. Mrs. Gerald, the mother of the bride from the wedding Elvis had handled, called to thank me personally. Your daughter is wonderful, she gushed. So professional and talented. And her husband is delightful too. You raised such a lovely family. My blood went cold. I'm sorry, what did you say? Your daughter Elvis and her husband David. They were perfect together. The way they worked as a team, you could tell they really love each other. It was beautiful to watch. I couldn't breathe. Mrs. Gerald, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Oh, I'm so sorry. Are they not married yet? Well, they will be soon, I'm sure. Anyone could see how devoted they are to each other. They couldn't keep their hands off each other all weekend. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I sat down hard in my office chair, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might explode. They had pretended to be married. At my business event. Using my company. They had let people believe they were a couple while representing Parker's Kitchen. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not only were they having an affair, but they were flaunting it in public, ruining my business reputation in the process. I picked up the phone and finished the call with Mrs. Gerald, somehow managing to sound normal. Then I sat alone in my office for 2 hours, staring at the wall and planning what to do next. I drove home that evening with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I had practiced what I would say 100 times. I would be calm, direct, and demand the truth. David was watching TV when I walked in. Elvis was in the kitchen making dinner. Everything looked so normal, so perfect. Like we were still a happy family instead of a lie. We need to talk, I said to both of them. Elvis poked her head out of the kitchen. What's wrong? You look upset. Mrs. Gerald called me today, I said, watching their faces carefully. She wanted to thank me for sending such a lovely married couple to handle her daughter's wedding. Elvis went pale. David's face froze. She was confused, David said quickly. We didn't say we were married. But you didn't correct her either, did you? I asked. You let everyone at that wedding think you were husband and wife. You let them think Elvis was Mrs. Parker. Elvis walked into the living room, wringing her hands. Linda, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, I said. Because from where I stand, it looks like you two are having an affair and using my business as your cover story. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. David stood up slowly. Elvis started crying. How long? I asked. More silence. How long? I shouted. 6 months, Elvis whispered. 6 months. Half a year of lies and betrayal. Half a year of them laughing behind my back while I worked to build our family business. Since when? I asked, my voice deadly quiet now. Elvis was crying harder. It just happened, Linda. We didn't plan it. We never meant to hurt you. Since when? I repeated. David finally spoke. Since spring. That night you worked late and we were both home alone. Elvis was upset about something and I was comforting her and it just happened. I remembered that night. I had been working on tax paperwork until midnight. Elvis had seemed fine when I left. David had kissed me goodbye like always. You're telling me that while I was working to support this family, you two were starting an affair in my house? It's not just an affair, Elvis said through her tears. We love each other. We're in love, Linda. Real love. Those words hit me like a slap. Real love. As opposed to what David and I had, apparently. 20 years of marriage, supporting each other through everything, building a life together. That wasn't real love? I want you out, I said to Elvis. Pack your things and get out of my house. Linda, please, Elvis begged. Let me explain. Out! I screamed. Get out of my house right now. Elvis ran upstairs, still crying. I turned to David, my husband of 20 years. What do you want to do? I asked him. He looked at me with sad eyes. I'm sorry, Linda. I never wanted this to happen. But I can't help how I feel. So you're choosing her. I'm choosing love, he said quietly. That was the moment my heart truly broke. Elvis packed her things that night while I sat in the living room, staring at nothing. David helped her carry boxes to her car. I heard them whispering in the hallway, making plans. She had an apartment lined up already. Of course she did. They had been planning this for months while I lived in ignorance. Before she left, Elvis came to find me. Her eyes were red from crying, but she looked determined. I know you hate me right now, she said. But someday I hope you'll understand. What David and I have is special. It's not something we could just ignore. I looked at her, this girl I had raised from childhood, and felt nothing but disgust. You're right, I said. I don't understand how someone could do this to the person who saved their life. I don't understand how you could steal my husband and call it love. I didn't steal him, Elvis said. He chose me. We chose each other. Get out, I said. And don't come back. After she left, David and I had the worst fight of our marriage. He said he was confused, that he needed time to figure out what he wanted. I told him he had already made his choice when he slept with Elvis. We barely spoke for the next 3 days. David slept in the guest room. I went to work and came home to an empty house. Elvis stopped showing up at the office. I had to handle all the catering jobs alone. On Thursday morning, I found divorce papers on the kitchen table. David moved out the following weekend. He rented a small apartment across town and took half of our furniture with him. I watched 20 years of marriage get packed into boxes and loaded onto a truck. The divorce process was swift and brutal. David wanted half of everything, including the catering business. Elvis was living with him now, helping him prepare his case. My lawyer was shocked when I agreed to David's demands without a fight. You're giving him too much, Mr. Williams warned me. The business is yours. You built it before you were married. Fight for it. I'm tired of fighting, I lied. The truth was, I was planning something bigger than a legal battle. I was going to let them have everything they thought they wanted. Then I was going to take it all back, piece by piece, until they had nothing left. Elvis started working at Parker's Kitchen again, now as David's partner instead of mine. They renamed it Parker and Associates Catering. The associates part was Elvis, even though she wasn't legally a Parker anymore. I moved into a small rental house and got a job working for a competitor. My former clients started hearing that Linda Parker was no longer with Parker's Kitchen. Some of them followed me to my new job. David and Elvis thought they had won. They had the house, the business, and each other. They were living my life while I started over from nothing. But I wasn't starting over. I was starting my revenge. For 6 months, I watched and planned. I kept track of every client, every vendor, every detail of the business I had built from nothing. David knew the catering industry, but he didn't know the secrets that made Parker's Kitchen special. Elvis was good with customers, but she didn't know my grandmother's secret recipes. She didn't know which suppliers gave the best prices or which venues had the most demanding managers. She was learning on the job, making mistakes. I started small. I called my old bread supplier, Mrs. Andrew, and told her I was starting a new catering company. Could she give me the same discount she gave Parker's Kitchen? Of course, Linda, she said. But I thought you were still with your old business? Things changed, I said. I'm moving on to something better. Within a week, Mrs. Andrew raised Parker's Kitchen's prices while giving me a better deal. Elvis called me, confused and hurt. Why is Mrs. Andrew being so cold to us? She asked. She's charging us more for the same bread we've always ordered. Maybe she doesn't like working with the new management, I suggested innocently. Elvis didn't know that I had spent 5 years building a friendship with Mrs. Andrew. I knew about her grandson's college fund and her husband's medical bills. I had been more than just a customer, I had been family. That was just the beginning. Next, I went after their vendor relationships. One by one, I contacted every supplier Parker's Kitchen used. I told them I was starting fresh and asked for their support. Most of them had worked with me for years. They knew I was the real Parker behind Parker's Kitchen. When I explained that I was no longer with the company, they were shocked. "But you built that business from nothing," said Tony from the flower shop. "How could they push you out?" I let them draw their own conclusions. ID. Our service. The dish rental place began charging extra fees. Elvis called me constantly, frustrated and confused. The business was still making money, but the profit margins were shrinking. Everything cost more and took longer than before. "I don't understand what's happening," she said during one of her calls. "It's like everyone in town has turned against us." "Business is hard," I said. "Maybe you're just not cut out for it." I could hear her getting angry. "I've been doing this for years, Linda. I know the business." "You've been helping me for years," I corrected. "That's different from running it yourself." She hung up on me. I smiled for the first time in months. The real blow came when I went after Elvis's cooking. She had learned a lot working in my kitchen, but she didn't know all my secrets. My grandmother's recipes were written down nowhere. They lived in my memory and my hands. The signature dishes that made Parker's Kitchen famous were mine. Elvis could make good food, but she couldn't make my food. I started my own catering business called Linda's Table. For my first event, I made all the dishes that had been Parker's Kitchen specialties. The honey-glazed ham with secret spices. The chocolate cake with the mystery ingredient. The pasta salad that people begged me to make for their parties. Word spread quickly. "Linda Parker is cooking again," people whispered. "The real Parker's Kitchen is back." Clients started asking Elvis why her food didn't taste the same anymore. She tried to recreate my recipes, but something was always missing. The ham was too salty. The cake was too sweet. The pasta salad was bland. Elvis called me in tears. "Please, Linda. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. The customers are complaining that nothing tastes right anymore." "I can't help you," I said. "You wanted to run the business without me. This is what that looks like." "But I'm family," Elvis cried. "You raised me." "Doesn't that mean anything?" "Family doesn't steal," I said, and hung up the phone. The next week, Parker's Kitchen lost 3 major clients to Linda's Table. David thought he could fix the business problems by being more involved. He started calling clients directly, trying to smooth over complaints and win back lost customers. That was his first mistake. David was charming, but he didn't understand the catering business. He made promises he couldn't keep and quotes that were too low to be profitable. His second mistake was trying to expand too fast. He thought if they could book more events, the increased volume would solve their money problems. So he started accepting every job that came in, even ones that were too big or complicated for their current staff. Elvis was overwhelmed, working 18-hour days trying to keep up with David's promises. She hired inexperienced help who made mistakes. Food was late, wrong, or poorly prepared. I heard through the industry grapevine that Parker's Kitchen had delivered the wrong entree to a wedding reception. Instead of chicken, they served fish to a bride who was allergic to seafood. The bride spent her wedding night in the emergency room. Word spread quickly in our small community. Parker's Kitchen was becoming known for problems instead of excellence. Meanwhile, Linda's Table was building a reputation for reliability and quality. I worked smaller events, but did them perfectly. Every client got exactly what they ordered, on time and beautifully presented. By winter, Linda's Table was booking solid while Parker's Kitchen was struggling to find work. The financial pressure was getting to David and Elvis. I knew this because David had to ask me for help with the mortgage on our old house. "I can't make the payment this month," he admitted during an awkward phone call. "Business has been slow. Could you help us out? Just this once." I had been waiting for this moment. "I thought Parker's Kitchen was doing great," I said innocently. "We're having some temporary cash flow issues," David said. "But we'll be fine. Elvis has some big events lined up for spring." "I'm sorry," I said. "I can't afford to help. I'm still building my new business." That was a lie. Linda's Table was already profitable. I had more money than I'd had in years. David had to take out a second mortgage on the house. When that wasn't enough, they started selling furniture. I drove by the house one evening and saw my grandmother's dining room table sitting on the curb with a for sale sign. I bought it back anonymously through a friend. By spring, David and Elvis were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank started foreclosure proceedings. My house, the house where I had raised Elvis, where David and I had built our life together, was going to be sold at auction. I made sure I was there on auction day. The auction was held on a cold Tuesday morning in March. David and Elvis stood on the front lawn, watching strangers walk through their home. Elvis were crying. David looked broken. When the bidding started, there were only 3 serious buyers. A young couple looking for their first home, an investor who wanted to flip properties, and me, bidding through my lawyer so no one would know I was involved. The opening bid was $60,000, less than half what David and I had paid for the house 15 years ago. The real estate market in our town wasn't great, and foreclosure houses always sold cheap. I let the other bidders drive the price up to $90,000, then started bidding seriously. By the time we finished, I had bought my own house back for $95,000. David and Elvis had to be out by the end of the week. I didn't tell them I was the buyer. I let them think some stranger had bought their home. They found a small apartment across town and moved in with just the clothes they could carry. 2 months later, I moved back into my house. Everything was exactly as I had left it, except emptier. Elvis and David had sold most of the furniture to pay bills. I started refurnishing it with pieces I bought back from the people who had purchased them. My grandmother's dining room table. My mother's china cabinet. The couch where David and I had watched movies for 20 years. Slowly, carefully, I put my life back together. Without the house payment hanging over their heads, David thought their money troubles were over. But the damage to Parker's Kitchen's reputation was too severe to fix. Elvis were exhausted from working constantly. She had lost weight and developed dark circles under her eyes. The stress was aging her rapidly. She looked older than her 30 years. David was drinking more. He showed up to catering events smelling like alcohol and acting unprofessional. Clients complained. Elvis covered for him, but she couldn't hide his problems forever. Their last big contract was for a company picnic in June. 500 people, their biggest event in months. Elvis prepared for weeks, planning every detail. The day of the picnic, David showed up drunk. He dropped a tray of hamburgers in the dirt and got into an argument with the client about the payment schedule. Elvis tried to salvage the event, but the damage was done. The client refused to pay and threatened to sue. Word spread through the business community that Parker's Kitchen was unreliable and unprofessional. By July, they had no bookings. The catering van was repossessed. Elvis had to let go of their last employee. In August, Parker's Kitchen officially closed. David and Elvis owed money to suppliers, vendors, and the IRS. They had to declare bankruptcy. The business I had built from nothing was dead. But I didn't feel sad. I felt free. Elvis called me one last time in September. She sounded different, smaller, defeated. "Linda," she said, "I know I have no right to ask, but I need help." David is not doing well. He's been drinking heavily. We're broke. I can't find work because everyone in town knows what happened. I said nothing. "I know you hate me," Elvis continued. "I know I destroyed our family and ruined everything. But I'm scared. I don't know what to do." "You're a smart girl," I said finally. "Figure it out. Please," the Elvis begged. "I'll do anything. I'll leave town. I'll leave David. Just please help me start over somewhere else." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She sounded like the scared 8-year-old girl who had come to live with me all those years ago. Then I remembered the sight of her in my kitchen, wearing my robe, laughing with my husband. "You made your choice," I said. "Now live with it." I hung up the phone and blocked her number. A week later, I heard that Elvis had moved back to the city where she went to college. David was in rehab. They were no longer together. My revenge was complete. 2 years have passed since that night I came home early and found Elvis in my kitchen. 2 years since my world fell apart and I decided to build it back up again, piece by piece. Linda's Table is now the most successful catering business in town. I have 5 employees and a waiting list of clients. I bought a larger commercial kitchen and 2 delivery vans. Last month, I catered the mayor's daughter's wedding. I'm living in my house again, surrounded by my grandmother's furniture and my mother's dishes. Everything is back where it belongs. David completed rehab and moved to another state. I heard he's working construction and going to AA meetings. He sent me a letter last year apologizing for everything. I threw it away without reading it all. Elvis never came back to town. Someone told me she's working as a secretary in an office building somewhere in Ohio. She's not married. She's not successful. She's just another person trying to get by. People ask me if I'm happy with how everything turned out. If I feel bad about what happened to David and Elvis. The truth is, I don't feel bad at all. They chose to take my life apart, and I chose to take theirs apart. The difference is, I was smarter about it. Some people might say what I did was cruel, that I should have forgiven them and moved on. But those people have never been betrayed by the 2 people they loved most in the world. I gave the Elvis everything. I raised her, educated her, and loved her like my own daughter. And she repaid me by stealing my husband and trying to steal my business. I gave David 20 years of my life. I supported his dreams and built a home with him. And he threw it all away for a girl young enough to be his daughter. They wanted my life so badly, they took it. So I took theirs back, quietly and completely. Now I'm 58 years old, and I'm starting fresh. I'm dating again. A nice man who owns the hardware store downtown. I'm traveling, something I never had time for when I was married. Most importantly, I'm trusting my instincts again. I'm never again going to ignore the warning signs when someone I love starts acting strange. My name is Linda Parker, and I learned that revenge is a dish best served quietly. Some people wait for karma to handle their enemies. But karma is slow and life is short. Sometimes, you have to take justice into your own hands.